today I want to go over a trend that I've noticed in the industry when it comes to firearm manufacturers making a steel frame or heavy aluminum frame version of their already good polymer frame guns. Now, steel frames are not a new concept when it comes to the industry. The original 1911, I believe, were a steel frame. Beretta and SIG came out with some new steel frame versions back in the 80s, 90s, and the early 2000s. So it's not a new concept. The polymer frame concept is actually a newer design. When Glock first got introduced to the US market, I think in the 80s or 90s, early 2000s, when it became really, really popular, that was the difference maker, was the polymer of a lighter gun that can be carried, easy to use, and actually better to conceal, and also the reliability of actually having a little bit looser of a tolerance when it comes to a polymer gun than a full steel frame gun. You have some issues with the 1911, the early 1911s possibly, and of course like the 9mm caliber in general. So I want to give you all some information today by doing a quick evaluation between a steel frame gun and a polymer frame gun. Now we're going to be using the PDP Walthers, for example, but I want to kind of draw some similarities between all steel frame and polymer guns. I'm going to do the best of my ability when it comes to that with the Walther platform, but just know this is not just the Walther platform. This kind of extends to all steel frame and polymer guns. I've had the liberty to actually shoot a steel frame gun in competition for 2.5, 3 years previously. And I've also now shot this year with a polymer frame gun. So I kind of understand the difference between steel and polymer guns, and I'm gonna try to express that to you today. The first comparison I wanna do between the steel frame and the polymer frame guns is gonna be a felt recoil test. Now, it being a felt recoil test, I'm gonna be the only one gonna be able to feel it, but I want to, with the capture of the camera, gonna be noticing how much muzzle flip and how much muzzle rise you have with the different guns, okay? So I have a modified MXAD drill set up, gonna be shooting 6 4-rounds in each target, and we're gonna see what the difference is between the two guns. Having shot them both back to back, they both shoot good. And with a proper grip and correct vision, both of the guns are gonna return to your original aiming point. There's no question about that. A good shooter is gonna shoot a gun good no matter what. But the metal frame or the steel frame definitely has less of an impact when it comes to the recoil. And I just noticed it just returning the dot from not a high position. So the polymer one was just jumping a little bit taller, versus the metal one was just jumping a little bit less. Both of them still coming back to the original aiming point. And then the polymer one definitely just feels like it's just popping back and forth, and the steel is a little bit more smooth and just kind of returns and cycles just a little bit smoother. But both of them shoot good. The next thing I want to compare between the two guns is actually the ability to whip the gun around in target transitions. Now, what a steel frame gun might have going for it when it comes to recoil might be a detriment when it comes to actually moving the gun around when it comes to a competition, shooting, whatever it may be, okay? So I have a designated target set up downrange, and we're going to shoot both guns and see how they perform. When it comes to target transitioning between the two guns of the steel and the polymer frame, the times are just about the same. They're all in this specific target engagement, they're all around 4.5, just under 5 seconds. There really is no discernible difference between grabbing one gun, shooting it, grabbing the other gun and shooting it. It's gonna be the same. If you practice with one gun, you will get super fast transition times with that gun. If you grab the other gun and start practicing with it, you'll get good at that gun. It really doesn't matter how heavy the gun is, in my opinion, when it comes to target transitions, because your brain is going to be an amazing thing and going to tell you when you overrun a target, hey, let's not overrun it on the next one. So you'll learn incredibly fast with either gun that you decide to shoot with. The next comparison point I want to talk about is the carryability of each of these firearms. Now you might say, hey, it's a steel frame gun. This is only going to be a competition or a range toy, and that's totally cool if that's what you want to do out of it. However, I want to put a heavy emphasis on actually being proficient with the gun you carry. So the weights of these firearms matter a lot when it comes to, hey, if I have a heavy gun, or this is my only gun, am I going to be carrying it day in and day out if I know it's a heavy, versus a polymer gun might be a little bit harder to control the recoil, not really, but it might be a lot easier to carry. Now, to give you all some frame of reference on different weights of the different handguns, I want to start out with giving you a weight of a normal empty Glock 17. It's going to be 25 ounces. Now, that's going to be definitely on the lighter end of the firearm weights, and on the heavy end is going to be a Shadow 2 optic ready at 46.5 ounces. Now, that is a lot of difference when it comes to shooting both of those guns side by side and just feeling the weight of them. It is a massive difference. Now, the Walthers, the polymer is 26.9 ounces and the steel is 41. That's a 14-ounce difference between the two guns, so almost a pound difference in the hand of the different guns. The Canik Rival has a 13.2 ounce difference between their polymer and steel frame versions. And SIG has the most of all, with a 21.5 ounce difference between their 320 full size and their 320 SXG that they just came out with of their steel frame. Now, those numbers are still kind of relative and what that means, but the main thing is if you have a gun that's too heavy and you're not actually going to carry it, it doesn't really matter too much. Again, if you are the fastest shooter in the world with an open or competition gun, that's great. However, if you can't shoot the broadside of the barn with the gun you carry in and day out, it really doesn't matter too much. So make sure that you're getting out and training with your firearm that you're carrying every day and that you're going to be protecting other people's life and trusting your life with it as well. The last comparison point I want to give y'all is going to be the cost difference generally between steel frame and polymer frame guns, because at the end of the day, it's going to be your hard-earned money that you're going to be spending between these two guns. So to give you all a visual representation of the price difference, minus excluding optics, we have a Walther PDP polymer frame gun and 5,000 rounds of ammunition of 9mm. Or we have the steel frame Walther. These are within about $100 of each other when it comes to the price difference. So that is astronomical, where you can buy a full gun and 5,000 rounds. That is a ton of training. Like, you could get so good with this and dedicated dry fire, or buying just the gun. And that's a kind of a point I see a lot of times brought up when it comes to buying really expensive guns. Either they don't buy ammunition to actually go out and train with it, or because the gun shoots so nice and so smooth, they're actually kind of lulled to sleep of how much training and how much time and dedication they need to put into getting better with the firearm. They kind of just, hey, the firearm does good by itself, so I don't really have to train that much with it. And I think that's a very, very detrimental to your overall shooting performance, that you should be training with whatever gun you choose, no matter if it's $600 or close to $1,800 or $1,900. Now, to give you all some more comparison of different prices, we'll go back to the same analogy we use with weights and give you all some different prices of guns. So a Glock 17 or a Glock 47 MOS is going to be close to around $620, $650. Shadow 2 optic ready, I think it's going to be in the ballpark of around $1,300. And then when it comes to the steel frame or polymer frame guns, it's close to double that of each of the manufacturers. Walthers are $600 versus $1,800. You have the Canik Rival. It's going to be $630 versus $1,000. SIG 320 is almost 3 times more expensive. You have the $550 320 versus the $1,800 steel frame. Now, it's not bad if you want to buy the more expensive, heavier steel frame guns. There's nothing wrong with that. Just make sure you're putting in the practice and the dedication of training, dry fire, and also buying the ammunition to go out and live fire and get good with whatever gun you choose. To conclude this comparison, I want to make sure that y'all remember that whichever platform you go with, whether it be steel frame guns or polymer frame guns, that you're putting in the practice and the training of dry fire, live firing, and getting better with either one of these platforms, because at the end of the day, no matter how much gear you buy or whatever it is, skill always beats gear.